Hey everyone, Jay Wilburn, Captain Three Kidneys here. Wanted to talk today about a couple ideas. One is that when I was riding my bike the other day, I do this mile loop around the neighborhood to come back to the house. So every time I pass the front door, it's a mile. And then on the bike, it's pretty flat ground. We live in South Carolina, but on the bike, I can tell where the inclines are. There's an incline from our house up to the first turn, and then there's an incline back to that stop sign from making the loop in that neighborhood. And you can feel it on the late miles where, my legs are giving me trouble and all that kind of stuff. And especially if I'm doing 10 miles total. And as I was doing the big incline, as big as it gets, I guess, but the slight grade from the house up to that first turn, there was a point where like the wind was blowing from that direction. So every time I was heading in that direction, the wind was in my face. Now I'm not a racer, there's no like gears on my bike or anything like that. So it's just a one speed pedal bike. And at that point, I'm not going fast. I'm just pushing the pedals and getting along. So in essence, the wind really doesn't play a factor. Even when it's blowing against me, it's really not creating enough resistance where it's changing my speed or anything like that. But in my head, I was being pushed. The wind was pushing me in my face, and it made it feel like it was harder than it was. So it felt like an obstacle, even though in my mind I knew it really wasn't. It was just wind, and in some ways it could have felt like a relief, from the heat and all that. But in my mind, I kept trying to change it into an obstacle. And I think a lot of times when we're facing various things, as tough as the ride is, the actual, pedaling or whatever it is you're doing to make it forward, we sort of try to invent obstacles, things, additional things that are pushing on us that are more in our mind than they are reality. So the actual fight and struggle itself is big enough, but when we try to create other things, other barriers in our mind that kind of keep us from moving forward, that can add to the trouble. So sometimes it's a matter of just convincing yourself that that's not as big of a thing as you think it is, and just to continue on with what you were doing as if that possible imaginary obstacle didn't exist. So sometimes that's part of what's necessary to just keep going, to put your miles down and get your goal in place. If you're watching this on YouTube, the link goes to a survey that I'm putting together. My wife and I are looking at trying to create and design resources that will help people that are in chronic pain and dealing with chronic illness, and then also people who care for those that are in chronic pain and chronic illness. If that applies to you in any way, if you'd be willing to kind of look at that short survey and give